Hi, I'm Nicholas from Mixer Magazine with Jordan and Corey from Last Butte, having a good old laugh. Welcome back to Australia.
Thank you.
Somewhere that I feel like you've very consistently been over this last decade.
Yeah.
I feel like where most bands tend to only come to Australia once per record cycle, it's never really been the case with Last Butte. You guys have come fairly regularly and fairly consistently.
Yeah, we made an annual trip out of it for the first half of this last decade. I think we came every year, maybe more than once, a couple of years, and then we were off for almost 5 before Good Things last year, I think. 4 or 5?
2014 was the last full tour. 'Cause that was my first. That was part of my first. Full
Was that the
tour
one
band.
with Rooms for Rooms
Yep.
That was
with Balance and Composure?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I've seen you guys a lot. Damn. Okay. So let's go back to the juxtaposition between the first tour in 2009 with To the North, playing house shows and warehouses.
Passing this off to me.
To playing now and being like, let's do 12 to 14 dates around Australia.
Yeah.
And just do the thing. Like, is it a bit surreal at this point?
Every aspect of being in a touring band is to a degree surreal, I think. Like just the ability to travel and play music for people is really wild and sometimes feels like living your fantasy, truthfully. But no, it's been funny. Like, that's the question that I've gotten far and away the most this time around. Like, you're coming to Australia and you're playing 15 shows. That's crazy. No one ever does that. And I think we probably wouldn't be doing that had it not been for the relationship with Australia that we forged coming very early on. We came here before we ever made the trip to Europe, which is
I didn't know
unconventional
that. Wow.
for an American band. We bypassed Europe at first when To the North hit us up on MySpace in like 2008.
MySpace.
Sponsored. So like, I think because of those like early years of touring, we really established a special kinship with the country. And when we came back for Good Things last year, I think it really reinforced our desire to come tour in a more proper capacity. So we tried to see how many shows we could fit into 3 weeks.
I think you hit on a really poignant thing as well, where a lot of bands in this microcosm of music, like in the States, don't come out and kind of convention to the other side of the world until like album 3 or something akin to that, because it's like to garner enough interest or whatever. And you guys were out here 6 months after the first record.
That's crazy. That's
Right,
actually
that's
very
actually crazy.
surreal. Yeah, it's like, especially at that period of time in
There must have been
touring.
so much uncertainty, like
yeah,
hey,
but you're not
let's go
old
to
enough to be
Australia.
more responsible. You're not old enough to know better, right? Like, there's the recklessness of youth, and you're 20, 21 years old, and you're with your best friends traveling around the country playing shows, and then somebody hits you up and says, "We love your record in Australia. We'll book a tour for you." You're not like, I'm sure there was to a degree consideration of like what we had to pay to get over there.
Sure.
But
You're not gonna say no.
no, you're definitely not. You say yes to everybody. Like, as long as somebody, as long as there's a PA, like, why not?
I think it's funny that nowadays, with where music's at and with everything being so like obtainable by Spotify and streaming services and stuff akin to that, and I come from that thing where I'd like buy a CD because it's on Trustkill Records or it's on like this label, and then I'd read who the thank yous were and being like,
We were just talking about this the other day.
all right. So that's the thing. And like, so again, some band on the other side of the world likes our thing. That's cool, I guess. Like, like, how does someone find, I remember buying like Tear from the Red by Poison the Well, having to import it from like that one CD store in Christchurch that brought in like US import stuff, paying like way too much money.
I bet,
Buying like Relationship at Command by At the Drive-In and stuff. And again, just because it was, hey, Ross Robinson did that record, so like crazy. So it's funny now that, again, as the industry's changed and as to look back then to where it is now, again, you guys it took your time with Panorama. It was a time-taken process, but it's not. It's almost because your music is so obtainable now that during your dormant period or time-taken process for the record, you're still, by proxy, people are still assimilating and kind of learning La Dispute and finding that. That seems crazy to me. Like it's rather than we're so focused on capturing the attention and keeping the attention of everyone, whereas I feel like your band by proxy is a slow burn with ultimate payoff, because you've taken your time and you've built all these kind of foundations of your fan base and those who've kind of come with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you there's a pressure, I think, an increasing pressure in the industry, probably for artists to stay relevant through a more consistent release schedule.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of music listening now.
Yeah.
But the thing that has always, I think, made our band what our band is the way that people connect to it on an emotional level, on an intellectual level, whatever it might be. And I think if we were to compromise the process by which we make the music we make, we'd sacrifice those things, what people engage with and attach themselves to. So we've talked about
Being faster.
And
Okay.
I think too there's a lot of variables with what you're saying. It's not entirely like a thing that we would set out to do to have a planned incubation period or anything like that.
Oh, and I don't think anyone sets out to go, hey, let's take 5 years to do the record.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, I don't know, it's hard to say, because with the way that the music industry has changed, I find, as someone who entered the fray of the band record, essentially record 3, Rooms of the House, that they had already established themselves as a band that could take an amount of time.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm not sure if that necessarily could apply if it wasn't for them starting when they did.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't think it's a thing we take for granted in hey, everyone's gonna wait. That sort of thing. It does take
Trust.
long, because we're trying to hit certain marks. I think there's a lot of variables. It's not necessarily planned. It just kind of ends up being that way for a myriad of reasons.
Is it the kind of thing where you'll start writing, and because obviously you guys are also spread around a bit as well, so it's not as simple as let's just jump into a rehearsal room and do a thing now.
That's a big part of it.
And yeah, so I mean, you kind of did that to yourself.
That's very true.
Absolutely.
You are not wrong.
But that's the thing. So it's, let's finish a tour and spend 2 weeks kind of maybe doing a thing.
Yeah.
Or is it sending demos back and forth and letting it kind of breathe?
It's a little bit of us kind of toying with ideas on our own. But in order for us to establish any really powerful sense of momentum, we kind of need to be at least working towards being together.
But that was where I was. That's where I was coming from, because Panorama is so dynamic and at times so subtle and vulnerable as a record, that I feel disconnected demos across the Atlantic Ocean isn't going to be able to be do you understand what I'm trying to do here?
Yeah, I think it's extremely helpful to be able to sit in a room with everyone and talk about it.
Yeah, I think for this band in particular, absolutely. Not that we're an exception or some, crazy outlier, but I think there's a degree to which we tried to do things a little bit more remotely.
Okay.
And then I think that quote unquote magic more or less really happens when we're all in a room duking it out.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that's, there's kind of a number of bands that I can think of where you can tell that. You can tell this is one that was made like the drummer came in last and just kind of played or whatever like that, like played the songs that were kind of already written, and then it's like here's the one where they did it in the room and they wrote it in the room, and there is that kind of live feeling and that magic. And I use that word a lot to describe certain, especially when I'm talking about like highly emotional music or anything like that, or highly vulnerable kind of cathartic music, because it is that thing where it's about capturing a moment. It's not about what's perfect. It's not about like nailing it to the nth degree. It's just kind of like
capture a degree of spontaneity.
Yeah, and what's the one that's got the magic? What's the one that's got the feeling and everything like that? So that's a really important thing. And again, in this kind of microcosm of music, is for lack of a better word, the genuine nature of it. Like it's kind of I want to hear that. I don't want to hear the perfect take or anything akin to that. With that said, you guys worked with Will on the last...
Perfect takes only.
Yeah.
Last two records, yeah.
Last two records. So there's got to be a semblance of trust with working with someone like that, and obviously his kind of discography alone really says a lot about the trust that he has with a lot of artists. So is that kind of having someone who's unafraid to be like, that's not it. Like, that's not it. It needs to be a bit more of this, or it needs to be exploring new avenues. Like,
well, I did not record in rooms with the house.
But you joined on the cycle.
Joined in the touring cycle. Had met Will, became fast buddies. Kind of passing through Philly a bunch, leading up to recording. And I was very excited to get the chance, which would have been my first time working with him as a producer. But yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of established trust from the rest of the band that I kind of like just absorbed in knowing that
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. And like knowing that he was gonna do what we needed him to do, and he did do things like that. I think a lot of it too was more just like arrangement stuff he helped us with, of just being like, like let's do this, like this is helping us identify what different things were in the songs that we brought to him, of just being like this is like a hook, in a band that doesn't commonly get referred to as like a hook like filled band,
or a band
melodically,
and a band that doesn't have conventional hooks.
Exactly. Sure. That's not to downplay any of it, but and he was able to grab onto parts like that and extrapolate them and kind of like we would build from there. So that was helpful.
I was going to bring that up because again, you're not a band that has conventional hooks. You are a band that has that repeating motif thing that I've talked about it a lot recently with a band like Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
It's like, here's the line, and the line is a repeat, like really about hammering that line home, not in a chorus kind of setting, but it's just there's a kind of rhythmic motif to it that kind of captures, and I can think of a number of times on the latest record that happens, and it's kind of about taking that motif, repeating it, and it's got a certain character to it. And again, it's not a conventional kind of let's sing the chorus moment. Right. Was that an active thing for you, or?
I mean, I think it's so if you're writing vocal parts, you are ostensibly the focal point for the majority of people who listen.
The anchor point for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's an instrument we all possess and a language we all speak, I guess. So when you don't rely on a melody to keep a part interesting, you have to do so in different ways. You have to do it through variations of pattern and through changing of volume and intensity levels. Yeah. It is truly kind of rapping in a way, truthfully. I mean, So I think that, yeah, you need to create hooks in a different way than providing people a catchy melody to connect to. So it's repetition of phrase and variations of phrase that maybe surprise at a point. So yeah, I think that's just kind of, that's in my toolbox.
That's cool.
And it's in the identity of the band too, and like.
I think so. Yeah, and I again, that's just a nerdy little thing that I, having listened to your discography very vehemently. It's a thing, and I think it's a, like, you can have an emotional connection to something without a melody.
Right.
And so I think you kind of explained it really poignantly, that it is about, it's almost like an infectious thing, like, again, a hook doesn't need to be a catchy chorus. We see a lot of heavy bands, hardcore bands, metal bands where, like, there's no conventional singing, but there's still a lot of rhythmic hooks.
Yeah, a lot of hardcore music is built on that type of hook, right? Like the sing-along parts.
The sing-along parts, yeah. Definitely.
And how it interplays with the rhythm of the music and,
right.
and the melody that exists within the rest of the instruments.
Yeah.
And I think, I know musically, and I think you approach like writing and vocally, approach things like really thematically. So as themes kind of return, those can be what are seen as the hooks.
Right.
And maybe they're a little bit more subtle at times, but I think that's definitely the way we approach the music for the last record, and I think probably on most of the records.
Has there ever been a discussion, like, as the writing process has matured? A lot of bands in their early stages and their formative stages have, like, oh, we can't do that because it's not us, or it's not La Dispute or anything like that. But you guys, I don't think doesn't sound like you've ever had any things like that, because your band's changed so much.
No, I think that if we were attempting to replicate a identity or a vibe from one record to the other, our records would be considerably less interesting, and we would invest less ourselves in making them. I think we've always approached everything differently, not just album to album, but song to song. I think it's important to challenge yourself so you avoid stagnating.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I think the minute we start to consider external factors like that, the less interested we'll become, and that will show in the content we produce.
And the magic will be gone.
The magic will
be gone.
Dissipated. Vanished into thin air.
I want to talk about, on a different kind of angle, what was the record that really spearheaded in your formative years, like, I want to be a musician? What was the record that went, okay, I want to do this thing?
It's a heavy question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
That's great. Do you have one locked and loaded?
The record that, like, set me on my lifelong path in punk rock, or whatever you want to call it, was Forever and Counting by Hot Water Music.
Yeah.
That was like, and I had loved music growing up. Listened to my dad's Neil Young records all the time when I was a kid, and started listening to, like, Rage Against the Machine when I was getting a little bit older, like in middle school. And then when I heard Hot Water Music, that was like my first introduction to punk with an ethos, punk with a sense of community, and it was really revelatory for me to be exposed to that at that time. So that's one for me that, like, I think really made me fall in love with music, not just as a means of entertainment, but as the means to find a community.
Maybe I didn't preface it right, but you actually, like, you nailed it, because there's, like, I can identify the record that made me, like, interested in music on just a listener level, but then I also identify the record that I was like, that dude with the guitar, like, I want to do the thing, and then at the same time I can also identify the record that, like, got me into punk and hardcore and stuff as well. So it's not really like a single, like, what's the one thing? So I apologize.
No, I could have said Hot Water Music, but, like, the band that made me want to sing in a band was Rage Against the Machine, for sure, when I was, like, 12 years old, hearing
Chuck Reagan and Zach De La Rocca. Chuck Reagan, I got to interview him last year, and it was a really weird moment for me.
Was it weird?
Like, I don't get starstruck. Like,
Yeah.
I've done this for a long enough time that I'm like, just talk nerdy shit with artists, and they enjoy it. And then I was like, I love your band.
That's awesome.
We toured with Power twice, and every day was like that. He's the coolest fucking dude.
He's just
the
so
nicest person.
And like, he's got that thing where like, I want to have my voice sound like that when I'm in my 40s, and just
He would come into the room almost every day to ask if we were all right, if we needed anything. Like, you guys good? You guys need anything? You guys got food? You want a bottle of whiskey? Anything I can get you? And we're like, no, we're good, Chuck. And he's like, all right, love you guys. And you just walk out of the room.
bliss.
Like every day.
Bliss.
It's great. Anyway.
Corey.
I think the album that got me into punk as a thing was London Calling by The Clash, but then the one that got me into the like community of hardcore and things like that was Shorter, Louder, Faster by Kid Dynamite.
That's not what I expected.
that was that first song, just like the I think it's Pits, Snakes, and Poison Apples, maybe?
Yes.
The very first song.
Yeah.
It's like a minute and 10 seconds long, and it starts out just with that huge burst of energy, and then goes into two-step and just gets really catchy. That was kind of like what I needed. It was like that perfect blend of like melody and aggression to like that. It's like what I could handle at the moment, you know,
Yeah.
when like you're first getting into stuff and like the stuff is too heavy and you're like, I just can't wrap my head around it yet, but
Yes.
like I want to because it's extreme and it seems cool. So I think that was the record for me where it like clicked, and then there was the like that communal vibe of people like singing along. You could hear it coming off the record, and that's when I knew that I wanted to play music that had not just a performative like energy to it, but like that kind of give and take from the performers and the audience. So
It's so funny that you bring up like I'm just not quite ready for it yet. Like Jane Doe is like one of my favorite records ever. You best believe when someone showed me Jane Doe for the first time, I was like, man, I'm just like, you're at 100 right now, and I'm like at a breezy 45.
And you're like, I want to get there, I want to be cool, but like, wow, this album's ripping my head off.
The first time I heard How Our Music, I was like, I do not like this. It took me like 4 or 5 times after my very cool best friend in 8th grade burned me that CD. And I remember listening to it and being like, I can't understand a fucking word this guy is saying. Why is he singing like that? And then, I don't know what it was, 3rd or 4th or 5th time through the CD, it just clicked.
And that's the magic.
That's when I caught up to Brian.
But yeah, there's definitely a thing, like, I guess I talked about the slow burn thing, and that's the thing, because someone who who'll hear a record or whatever, again, it's like, you might hear a record and be like, oh, no, but I'll get there. Like, I think, you guys Radiohead fans?
Yeah.
Right, so Radiohead reached this point on, like, Amnesiac and Kid A, where they'd done, like, the Bends and they'd done OK Computer, and everyone was like, I know what to expect from a Radiohead record, and then they were like, no, you fucking don't. And I remember listening to Amnesiac for the first time and being like, oh, this isn't what I expected, but I think I like it, like, and I think I'll get there and stuff. So I think there's a lot to be said about the slow burn records that you're like, I'm gonna like this in 6 months. I'm gonna really like this in 6 months.
And as you get older, you can like identify those two. You're like, I'll shelve this for now. I'll probably be into it. Whereas I think in younger years, I would have just been like, don't like it, it's gone. But
it was harder back then because you invested in this tangible physical thing
that you paid $15.
How many records did you buy just based on the artwork? Like,
quite a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I bought it because of a label, or like someone had thanked them in the liner notes.
That's what we were talking about the other day. That's how I found so many bands back in the day. There was no algorithm to suggest similar artists, so it was like, you love one thing, and then you just track down everyone you can find in the thank yous, and listen to those records.
It's almost too easy nowadays.
The first album I bought was Crazy Sexy Cool by TLC. and
Wait, with waterfalls on it, right?
Waterfalls on it.
The blue cover.
It's a red cover.
Red cover?
Yeah. And I mean, it had the words "crazy, sexy, cool" on it. So maybe not the artwork, this red or blue cover, but it had words that interested me.
I think I bought Jamiroquai's "Traveling Without Moving."
Hell yes.
Yes. And that's another one where 29-year-old me listens to that record now, and I was like, Stuart Zender's like the best bass player in the world, but in tune with what you were saying, all I cared about was the vocal melodies, like as a kid.
Right.
And now I can appreciate the musicianship and like the ridiculousness of the musicianship at like, you know, in my late 20s going, oh yeah, this is ridiculous. So it is kind of like, it's funny how your perspective of something can change and how...
And rounding back the stuff that maybe... Because like when you're younger, you listen to things for really true reasons. You're just like, I like this.
Yeah. Right.
And it's so
no
black
other
and white.
outside variable telling you it's
Right.
cool or not or something like that.
Or like you go
Except for
to
Brian,
school with
it's
someone...
It's cool.
Brian
Jordan.
was always ahead of the curve, to be honest. Still to this
What
day.
is that story? Brian is...
Brian? Oh, Brian was the kid in my class, still a friend to this day. Hi, Brian. Who had a CD burner before everyone else, and he also had the cool older brother, and the parents that would buy him Jinko jeans. So he was just like the fucking coolest guy, and he introduced me to a lot of the music that altered the course of my existence. So I'm deeply indebted to Brian as well.
Brian.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, Brian. Hi from Australia.
Hey, Brenton. That was my friend who
Brian and Brenton.
introduced me to London Calling, another BR.
Yeah. BRs, dude.
Everything that I got was from my brother Ryan. Like my
Brother.
older
BR.
Brian. My brother's name is Brian. Oh my god.
But yeah, he's 3 years older than me, so everything that I listened to was because of my cooler older brother.
Yeah, I had that.
I had I have two much older sisters. Didn't get much cool music from them, but I got a lot of cool music from them. Or no, I got a lot of music from them. None of it was cool. But
None of it was Crazy Sexy Cool by TOC. Oh man. Thank you guys so much for just hanging out and nerding
Dude,
out
thank
for a
you.
bit. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate you, man.